Mokshda, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure to have you. I remember that alongside someone else who we had a few weeks ago, you were one of the first persons I spoke to about potentially having a podcast. At the time, it seemed like a crazy dream, and
yes.
I've been following you ever since.
I've been following you also, Joanne.
Thank
and
you.
I think I told you are my inspiration.
I don't believe that for a second. But
no, but it's true, because you really struck out on your own. And you know, when you did it, I said, why can't I do the same thing?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did it as well. I mean, you were really, really good as a director of IGLS. I remember the way the passion,
Thank you so much.
Carried through. And when we did our, the course that we have to do for prospective barristers, you ran one of the lectures, and
yes.
That's the one I enjoyed the most. I have to say, you're so good at bringing the best out of us. I mean, it seems like a different life now, right?
Everything has changed. Everything changed. 2020. When I left IGLS, and then I decided to, so it was my second innings, I decided to strike on my own, went back on the Royal Barristers, and also I started my own training company, Lex Aquila. Why I did it? Because while I was a director of IGLS, I was sitting there and I followed all the courses. 3 years I sat in every single course on the laws of Mauritius. Yes. And I realized that there's a vacuum somewhere, that we have to bring Mauritian laws, put more emphasis on Mauritian laws, because we have a lot of law practitioners who come from abroad. And also a lot of people are not very clear about Mauritian laws. So the idea was this, that basically to bridge the gap between the law degree and the practice, so that when you put lawyers in the market, we are putting lawyers who are well versed with Mauritian laws.
So who's your typical audience then?
It's a mixture. And then it has evolved over time also.
Sure.
In 2020, there was a lockdown, so we had a lot of students. And the course we were running at the time, to the 3-day course on crash course in Mauritian laws, we had law students, Mauritians from UK, from Switzerland, from Australia, from people from everywhere in the world. They were following those courses. Then I also offered a lot of courses in civil procedure, family law. So it was junior barristers who were going out in practice, who've done the bar in England, who needed that aspect
Foundation.
of civil law, the basic practice-oriented courses. And I must say also I have very good trainers. They're all practice-oriented people who actually work for me. And we were doing it like, it was really like a fireplace thing. After dinner, sit down in your house, in your room, and it was a discussion, small groups, discuss about issues and what the law says and what do we do in practice and how it happens. So it was all this experience sharing which was also going on. Now, the direction Lex Aquila has taken is different, because also it's being managed now by some other people. So I'm also a trainer with Lex Aquila. We are moving into more corporate training.
Okay.
So we are moving more into what is the need of the hour, which is AML, CFT, termination of contract. So more courses which are more in demand in the corporate sector. As far as my passion, which remains family, women, children, all these aspects of domestic violence laws and gender-based violence and all, I still do it. It has also freed my time, because now I'm doing it at a regional level on Africa. I've done in Rodrigues also. So I'm able to travel, and I work with international agencies, whether it is UN Women, UNODC. I have worked with a Canadian agency, IISD. My core area has remained law, women, and violence.
Why are you particularly passionate about these subjects? I mean, as I said, I follow you on LinkedIn, and your posts are often about domestic violence, gender violence, sexual harassment, violence in the workplace.
Violence against children, violence against the elderly. I'm a consultant, so anybody who requires my help on the legal aspect, like GRF, asks me for my help to prepare the disability law module. So again, I've prepared that. I write reports on violence. So I had a UK solicitor who asked for a report on a risk assessment on feminicide in Mauritius for a Mauritian client in UK who didn't want to come back. I wrote a report for African Union on discrimination laws in Mauritius against. So yes, why am I passionate about it? Yes. I think I've been in this field for more than 25 years. When I was at LSE, in my first year, I took a module called Women in Law, in which I scored a first. And I think that was also the click, as we say. Yes. I also studied policing. And
you?
yes,
Oh, wow.
that's why I work a lot with the police.
Sure.
I've trained the police
Yes.
in Mauritius on
Yes.
GBV. I don't know whether that's helping or not. It's a continuous work. And I've trained the police in Senegal and police in India and all that. But yeah, I've never wasted my education in that sense. When I started out as a barrister 25 years ago, I actually worked as a consultant for the Ministry of Gender, going into the factories, you know, at really grassroots level. I went and saw these women, and we taught women, we taught them domestic violence laws. The DV had just come out, 1997, you know. So I was doing all this. So it was like, you know, at the grassroots hospitals, we were going to these places on legal aid. That's what mostly the cases you were getting. Then as a magistrate later on, I was writing judgments on it. So it is something which was very close to me. And I also realized that it's very difficult for women to empower themselves and use the law. It's very difficult for...
Because of the lack of knowledge, do you think?
Yes, definitely lack of knowledge, but also lack of support. And then the woman also, she believes, I mean, it's also a lack of self-esteem in herself. You know, a woman who has been suffering from violence continuously over a period of time, a lot of them suffered from the battered wife syndrome, but a lot of them are kind of become fatalistic about their fate, kind of thing. And they do not believe they can get out of it. Telling them about the law. Law for me is an empowering tool.
Of course.
It empowers women and children and elderly and everybody to know that, you know, there's somebody here who will protect you. If you go to the police, then you will have the system is giving you, the officer, the enforcement officer will be there, and then you'll get a lawyer from the government. So all this is there. Of course, in practice, sometimes it works and it doesn't work. But, you know, I mean, at least there's a system in place, you know.
At least they know what their rights
Exactly.
are. What is the framework.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When they start using the law, then also I think it makes the men realize that communication is not through violence. What I have noticed personally that's an observation, I don't have any study to say it, there has been an escalation in the seriousness of violation or violence against women. Men do not just now slap or
kill.
hit. Exactly. If you look at the feminicide we have had. And have you noticed also, why I'm saying it, why it's my observation, because I saw the same thing in India when I was working there and I saw the gang rape happening and things happening. That was a backlash against women. At that point in time, women were going out to work, so a woman who's working and then coming back home alone, it was a kind of backlash against feminism, basically, saying that...
How dare you leave the home and get a job?
Exactly. And why are you in the public space when your role is to be in the house?
To cook, to clean, to look after your husband.
The gang rape, the violence was a way to put her back in her place.
What do you think drives it here, though? What do you think is the main... What's the societal...
I don't know. I think we need to have studies done about it. But definitely there's an ego issue, which is exacerbated. Have you noticed how flimsy the excuses that the criminals give?
Very. On
allegations or mere suspicions of adultery. Did you see the case?
It's very banal, actually. Yeah.
And look at the case of Saint-Julien, the guy who actually filmed it. Have you also, I mean, what I have noticed personally is they are also doing things during the day in public spaces now. Whether it is a crime in Mahogany Mall, trying to cut the neck of his
There was one in a bus, right?
Yes,
in a
one
bus,
when the girl was coming out of the bus, and then that was in Goodlands. The one in Saint-Julien was he actually filmed everything. And he was trying to make her confess that she had affairs. And then he killed her and burnt her alive. I mean, come on.
Tragic.
What is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening? It's like, I think they feel they can get away with it. They feel justified in taking that action. It's a little bit like also the escalation, it happens. Also the point, this is what is important to know, the tipping point in violence. A woman should know when she needs to leave the house and go. And not stay there because of the children, because of this, because...
Of what people might say.
Forget it, man. It's your life. You're going to be killed next. Yeah. And this happens everywhere in the world. Yeah. And then they have to realize that your women's rights are human rights. It's the rights which are inherent in you, you know. This violence is everywhere. Whether it is in India, whether it's in Africa, I've seen it. It's everywhere. And we need to change things. We need to change mentalities, you know.
When you do your work on a day-to-day basis, you also have a private practice as well. How do you emotionally detach yourself from it not overwhelming you? That's probably why I'm a tax lawyer. I just do
You don't get sucked in the tax issue. You don't dream about tax, do you?
Yes, exactly. Or even if I do, I mean, I don't, like when you're talking about, violence, women being attacked, pedophilia that you also deal with as well.
I was a director.
How do you do your job well without it overwhelming you?
I keep balancing my chakras. No, it is quite difficult. You do get sucked in, 'Cause I deal with people's problems. Even when a client comes to me for divorce or for domestic violence, I'm actually holding the hand of the client from day one until the judgment. So it's like you're always there to listen to and counsel the client. And, every time it's like, a door is always open and it's very emotional. And how do I do it? I swim. I swim, I try to meditate, I try to switch off, I travel. That helps because you meet people and you realize that your problems are small compared to what is happening in Africa, the violence which they are seeing there, rape of children in conflict zone and things like that. When I go there and I say, Mauritius is paradise.
Yes, when everything is relative. Yeah, everything is relative.
Yeah.
I mean, you've spoken about Africa a few times and you're doing regional trainings as well, as you've said.
Yes, I've done training of women in mining sector on West Africa, but that was online, which was quite good. But it was quite interesting also because I had to learn everything. With the minings, I've trained the police on GBV in Senegal. I've trained the prison officers and the judges and lawyers in Mali and Niger on Bangkok rules, the human rights of women prisoners. I've trained judges on Maputo Protocol. Incidentally, after my training, that was January last year in Kenya, and I trained on GBV and sexual harassment. So these are the two key, my flagship, if you want, of training I really do. And sexual harassment, we do it also at university level. We've done in Middlesex, UCLan and all. I've just finished in University of Mauritius. Because it's very important to sensitize young girls, but because what happens is sexual harassment leads to acceptance and condonation of violence later in relationships and in marriage. This is where the coercion and controlling behavior comes in, which is not in our law. It's in the UK domestic abuse 2021 law. But it is psychological violence, which is not visible.
Yes, gaslighting.
Exactly. But then will the courts, you have to, how do you bring the evidence?
Yeah, they recognize it as a form of violence.
So, and I believe that this way it starts. It starts as a teenager. The first time you have a boyfriend and the boyfriend is telling you, send me the message, where are you going, what are you wearing, etc., etc. That's where it starts. And then the pattern is created. And then the pattern can escalate to violence at a stage. And please note that women get killed when they try to leave their partners. Most studies have shown the moment the woman decides to leave the man, whatever it's a spouse, a concubine, whatever you want to, that's the moment that the trigger, that's a turning point of feminicide comes in.
So what would be the solution then? Say you're in an abusive
A woman
marriage.
needs to first of all recognize the pattern of violence. You have to understand the psychology of violence. I don't teach the psychology of violence, but I do train on spot the red flags.
Okay.
You have to spot the red flags. If he's quiet, it doesn't mean that he's accepting whatever you are doing or you're saying. You have ample examples of these kind of things, and know when it's time to walk out. You have to. It's very difficult, but I think a wife, a woman who's in that situation, she will know. She'll figure it out that it's becoming dangerous now. And don't just sit there because of the children. Take the children and go. The other thing is important. I think it's important to train the frontliners. Who are the frontliners? It's the police. Now, it all depends. A person who's already traumatized in this situation of violence, when she goes to the police and the police is like, ayo, la time. It's like,
it's 3:45.
3 o'clock, l'autre chiffre peut venir, bien, si attends un petit moment, l'autre chiffre pour rentrer, la madame encore même, ou pour venir à case là. I mean, the attitude of the police has to be also very receptive.
Are you training the police here?
I have trained all the police here, from ASP to down. But again, it's a continuous work.
Sure.
Because the
it's
police,
not going to change overnight. The attitude won't change overnight.
There's a police culture. And the police culture, which is everywhere in the world, is very macho and it's very patriarchal. And in Mauritius, especially if you go to certain police stations, especially in rural areas, many a time the police officers have played football or they know the perpetrators.
Right.
So
right.
the woman, at the time she comes to complain, they call up the guy, your wife is here. And then of course, it's in the circular, they can do a mediation. So then they tell the woman, you come from a good family, what are you doing?
Are you sure you want to press charges?
Although it's mandatory for them to press charges. Okay? But then in practice, they will press charges if there's a signs of violence. Now, if you don't have any sign of violence on your face, what do you do?
How do you show it?
How do you show it? Psychological violence, how can you prove it?
But in the various trainings that you have done, obviously, as you said, it's a continuous learning, but do you see a level of receptiveness and willingness to change the mindset?
I think it's an ongoing process. I think it's always changes because regarding police training, you train a group of police and who are working in the Bureau de Protection de la Famille or whatever, and then they get transferred. And then it's a
new batch coming.
And then say, for example, it's a police that drugs police are coming in this department. And then these are people who are used to dealing in a different way. So I believe that it's extremely important to have police who are really interested in this area to join the department. It's the same as judges also and lawyers. You go into this area, you need to have that kind of empathic feeling towards, and an interest in this area.
Yeah.
Otherwise
you'll have no vested interest to, invest yourself, as it were.
Why I'm telling you this because I have noticed, and this is one of I feel the weakness in our system. I have noticed that, especially in cases of domestic violence, there's a lot of pressure on the victim to withdraw her case, whether at the police level, but also later on, even if they provided lawyers to go up to the courts. The courts will also look at two things: is whether all these victims is the victim and the perpetrator living together. Right. If they are not living together, then the magistrate, in his discretion, is saying that there's no apprehension of harm or risk of harm. So therefore, no protection order. And then there's an indirect pressure. Why don't you just withdraw your case, and the husband will give, or the perpetrator is going to give an undertaking of good behavior.
What does it mean?
It means that you don't have a judgment right. Okay? It also means that he says he is very sorry for the violence he has caused, and therefore he promises he won't do it again. And then she, in return, she'll withdraw the case, and he will go to follow counseling. He may go for one counseling. It's not mandatory to follow counseling, by the way. That is why the domestic violence laws have to be amended. And that is what there is a movement towards. I'm hoping it's going to happen in March when that has been announced also by the government. There has to be a focus on really training or teaching the man, the perpetrator, can be the woman also, to manage their anger, to learn how to communicate, and also to learn how to live in peace. Because what happens is, in this case, for example, I had a client who was beaten black and blue, who was raped, who was sodomized. Really, really bad case.
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence. I went to court 4 times with this lady. At the end of the day, the pressure was there that let's do an undertaking. He promises, now they don't live together, and he's promising he's not going to be violent. He's going to divorce her anyway. So withdraw the case. What about justice for that woman who has been, who has suffered such violence? There was no justice. And how could I say, no, I want a judgment? Because in any case, if they don't live together anymore, she won't get any protection order. Do you understand what I mean?
Right.
And then what happens? The consequence of this is that this man does not have any record that he is a man who has committed any crime, domestic violence crimes. So therefore, he's going to get married again. He'll never have any previous convictions.
And perpetuate the vicious circle of domestic violence on another unsuspecting.
He's already married. Exactly. In England, in UK, they had what was called Clare's Law.
Okay.
Where it was, at that point in time, there was this woman who wanted to leave her husband. She had sent mails and all things like that. He had seen them, and he killed her. So this law came up afterwards, where it was said that basically the police could send messages to women to unsuspecting women.
Right.
Online, or I don't know how, which method, but to kind of warn them that the man they were going to date or the man they're going out with is already convicted under domestic violence. So I think that is something. We have a register for sex offenders for children. Why don't we have a register for men who have been convicted of domestic violence?
Have you tried to make representations?
Actually, I haven't, to be very honest, I haven't really got time to do that.
Sure,
but I think,
sure.
yeah, that's a good point. I should actually try to do that.
Because I think you have so many great ideas of how we could improve it. And, you can do all the trainings in the world, but does it get to the right ears, the policymakers to
I am part of
a
certain, I'm a legal consultant with NGOs like Passerelle. So whenever there was this the legal consultation on the Improvement of Domestic Violence Act, so I was part of that. So in that sense, there was some representation made. Also, I've been part of there's a national, do you know that in Mauritius, there's a national committee on GBV, on gender-based violence?
I didn't know that actually, no.
Okay. Because we have reached national crisis level, and it's directed to the PMO. To tell you how serious it is, there is a move. There's a move towards, let's deal with it and let's finish it. Let's, reduce the violence. Let's eliminate the violence. But it's not happening. 4 murders in March last year, remember? And it has continued. The Mahogany Mall, what happened there, and that other one in Saint-Julien, and it's like, so people don't learn. So I don't know. I really want to analyze what goes in the mind of these men. There was one thing I had read, I was reading the papers somewhere, where this man had killed his wife. And I was reading his confession, it was in the papers, so I really don't know how much is. But he said, I took a stone and I hit her on the face until the stone broke. So for me, this is what we are not getting. We are not getting that the violence is increasing. It's not just domestic violence, it's a gender-based violence. It's hating the woman. Whether it's the power game, the power control, it comes back to having this power dynamics in gender.
Do you think it could be linked to some broader societal issues, such as, for example, I haven't seen any studies on that. Just speculating whether it could be linked to alcoholism or drug-related issues, or the man is frustrated in his own workplace because he's getting bullied by his boss, so I don't know.
So he takes it out on his wife?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether this type of violence are linked to other societal issues. I don't know.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, yes. Definitely there are men who are frustrated. Men, I believe men, I'm taking it from the men point of view, for whether women is a victim. There are cases where men are, maybe it can be due to drugs. There must be all these other external issues, but I believe there's also a lot of internal issues. And in my humble opinion, I think it's also linked to the fact of maybe our own DNA. Many of us also come from Asian heritage, where the ego and the honor of a man resides in his wife or his partner. Sure. So if she's leaving me, then she can't leave me. She's my honor.
Yeah. In your property.
In India, exactly. In India, they say that a man has three things: roots, jar, joru, zameen. So roots, wife, and land. These are the 3 things which matter to a man. So he can't lose these 3 things.
So it's some sort of failure if
as a man, as a reflection on himself.
How dare you?
If his wife has left him and gone maybe with another guy, where the suspicion thing come, or she's with another man or something, then that's a reflection on him that he is a failure in society. So I don't know. These are specific. Really speculations. Sure, yeah. I know there's a national observatory on GBV which has been set up for research purposes. So I think there has to be some research done, and I think also point has been taken at the UN level also on some reports that there are not enough data and not enough analysis for children in the case of violence against children and all that, which was recent. So yes, we need to do more studies and more research on these. But look at the number of divorce happening. I go to court almost.
Do you think this is something to do with the pandemic?
I do believe yes. I do believe the pandemic has taught women maybe that they can
flushed out,
Yeah, they can survive on their own. They don't need to sit down and take the shit. And they have a job. The kids are growing up nicely. They have everything. So why do they need to suffer violence at the hands of a man? So yeah, I think the pandemic has really opened the eyes of many women, but it has also regressed the rights of many women also, because a lot of women have lost, and that's overall. The pandemic is called the shadow pandemic for women. There has been a big regression of women's rights everywhere, and you can see it everywhere. Violence coming out,
Mokshda, you've written a book, and I'm hoping it helps answer some of the questions that people have, or it would help unlock some of the big issues that people, as you said, it starts with education, knowing what your rights are. It's not it's only one piece of the puzzle.
And I think we'll start the education level. We shall start at school or at college. At college in Mauritius, we have to start it at that stage. Exactly. This book is
Tell us a little bit about the book.
This book, I wrote it in the pandemic. When there were lockdowns, I was sitting at home and teaching and training at home, and I had time to think. So this book and also it was commissioned. This book was commissioned by the National Women Council. They commissioned me a booklet.
I see.
So when I was researching for the booklet,
it turned into a book.
It turned into a book. The booklet has been remitted, and I'm doing the legal literacy program now for the National Women Council. But when I researched and I started to really look at the law from a macroscopic point of view, and looking on how women fit in which area. So whether it is IT laws, whether it's labor laws, and whether these laws actually protecting women, helping women, or empowering women, or are they acting as a deterrent? For example, if you look at employment laws, are the laws today encouraging women to come back to work? We have done a research with Kantar on this, and it was quite interesting to analyze. So this book, a kind of culmination, and then also looking at the research, at the cases. But as I told you, this book is not going to be on the market until the new laws.
An updated version.
An updated version going to be available. I'm waiting for March to see what are the changes to be brought in the area of women in laws. And then I'm going to come out with the updated, fresh book.
Okay, well,
I do not want to have this one out and then everything becomes obsolete overnight.
And you said that you wanted to add a chapter on corporate laws, women in the corporate sector as well.
Yeah, I think there is a glass ceiling, isn't it? And just having one woman at the board level, that is not sufficient. This is not really going to help if we don't open the doors for growth and for women within the organization. Now you need a woman, for example, if you look at violence at work. I'm now working a lot on violence at work. Mental health in the workplace for women. Yes. And it's not only sexual harassment, although there's a lot of sexual harassment at the workplace, but it's also mental and moral harassment.
Which is invisible and more insidious
and
in many ways.
which is a major cause where women are either going to leave their job or they prefer to remain at lower levels. And then look at, that's the law part, but also look at workplaces which are not empowering women. You want a woman to work, you want women to be able to grow and reach to the top, then give facilities. Then organizations have to provide, I don't know, creche facilities or... Yes. I worked for a company in India. It was a French company there, and it was an IT company. And there was a creche. So in lunchtime or for breastfeeding, the woman can go at that level, or the kids were there going to check on her kids. And you know,
that's how you encourage women to go back to the...
And that's how the women were staying there up to 8 at night, and they were like, you know, putting on extra hours and everything.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a worldwide issue. I remember I was speaking to a really good friend of mine who lives in Manchester, and the UK and I think Switzerland are the places where the cost of childcare is so prohibitively high that it actually stops women from going back into the workplace, and it's shocking.
But the other thing also now, which is good thanks to the pandemic, is that we can work from home. So there has to be, we have to rethink the concept of work also, that for women who can work flexi time with going to the office like once or twice a week, or, you know, and then, you know, manage your time around the children's, and so long you're meeting your deadlines, you're giving back, why not? So really, I would say every woman has to work. I would say every woman has to be financially empowered, because if you want to be able to speak, to have your freedom of speech, you need to be financially empowered. Earn your own money. Don't depend on anybody. Stand on your own feet and then speak out for yourself, because we have to uplift everybody, and we have to also be role models, and I think you are one, Joanne, for the next generation. Because we need to get girls not to look at work just as a, peltrier bread attitude, look
to
at
really
work.
add value.
Yeah, add value, and then to also to be part of your own authentic identity. And then you have to aspire to reach to the top. Why not?
Yeah. Why not, as you say? Why not? Mokshda, thanks so much. We'll have to have you back because there's not enough time to talk about all we want to talk about. When your new book is out, please let me know. I'd love to delve into it, and then we can, pick some chapters that we can do some deep dive into.
I will also have to, one last thing I want to add, I have started my NGO. So all the work I cannot do through Lex Aquila or through my legal practice, we do it through the NGO.
And what's the objective of the NGO?
It concerns family well-being. So that's quite it's wider. So it's called Empower. And what we do is basically try to really, again, sensitize women, but then take it at the grassroots. Sensitize women by empowering them financially without giving money, but showing them how to get skills, So in the group, it's like we have got girls who are hairdressers, beauty parlor. So, get the woman to become entrepreneurs. That was what we're trying to do, to make women become entrepreneur. Think about starting something. Think out of the box. Because that's what COVID has also taught us. So many women are there on Facebook now. They're selling baking cakes, doing so
catering,
many things.
all sorts.
Exactly. Yeah. So every woman has. And Mauritians, I think we are very resilient and we are débrouillards, isn't it? So
on sait comment tracer, comment on dit.
Exactement.
Thank you again, and I wish you all the very best. Keep shining, and you are also an inspiration to me, so thank you.
It's mutual. Thank you very much.
Thank you.